Welcome to Alchemical Science. I'm Jordan Collin, an independent researcher, an alchemist, and a student of the inventor and vortex fusion specialist Malcolm Bendall. I thought it was about time to collate an up-to-date 2025 overview of the Thunderstorm Generator and the science now behind it. So, in collaboration with the inventor of the Thunderstorm Generator and my teacher Malcolm Bendall and a host of independent scientists and replicators, I have put together this distilled 33-slide presentation. For anyone new to the technology, this presentation should give you at least a preliminary understanding of the independently verified claims about what the Thunderstorm Generator does, and an evidence and observation-based hypothesis of how it does it. For further information after this video, you can subscribe to Alchemical Science and be sure to check out the resources linked to in the description, including Malcolm Bendall's own website, strikefoundation.earth, where you'll find his lectures, notes, resources, and printable posters of the Plasmoid unification model and alpha and omega ladder process, both of which will be shown in the presentation. There's a ton of information packed into each one of the following 33 slides, and we'll be moving fast through them. But remember that I delve deeper into every point that we briefly touch on in this presentation in other videos in this so far 18-part Alpha and Omega ladder series. So if you want to go deeper, the information is there, and there will be plenty more coming. So go and check out the rest of the series after this video. And I hope you will consider sharing this video on your social media, covering it on your own channel, or sharing it with friends or colleagues who may be interested. This is a good one for that. Now let's begin the presentation. The Thunderstorm Generator and the Alpha and Omega ladder process. An overview of Malcolm Bendall's technology and the science behind plasmoids and low-energy atomic fusion. What does the Thunderstorm Generator do? The Thunderstorm Generator is a low-cost retrofit system designed for internal combustion engines, coal power plants, turbines, or any other technology which emits carbon and heat. So anything with an exhaust pipe or chimney, essentially. It contains no rare metals or complex components, and the only additional required input is water. The independently verified advantages of the Thunderstorm Generator. It reduces or completely eliminates toxic exhaust emissions, including carbon dioxide, CO2, carbon monoxide, CO, hydrocarbons, HC, and NOx, nitrous oxide, and there are some other things that it also reduces or completely eliminates, including sulfur. It produces oxygen or breathable air, similar to atmospheric constitution, so that is breathable air coming out of your exhaust pipe, not just oxygen, but the constitution similar to atmospheric air that we breathe, which is obviously very useful. It reduces fuel consumption by up to 64% under load, significantly increases the engine runtime on the same amount of fuel, that means. So we're reducing fuel consumption, and it also reduces fuel consumption with no load, but it reduces it more under load. It prolongs the engine life by removing the existing carbon residue from the engine and the oil and preventing new residues from forming. So we found that it cleans out the engine, and this has been confirmed by other independent replicators of the technology. It produces a spread of rare and useful elements through a process of stepwise atomic reconstruction or transmutation occurring within the reactor of the system, the Thunderstorm Generator Vajra. And this is one of the most, out there claims of the system, but the analysis that we'll provide does indeed confirm and show this, and this is supported by various scientists. What are the applications of the Thunderstorm Generator? The Thunderstorm Generator not only provides a means for companies, governments, and nations to meet current regulations and long-term carbon emissions targets immediately, but it can also produce oxygen or breathable air, as we mentioned, from the exhaust emissions, and it ultimately does not require any oxygen input to operate once it's been started. The groundbreaking advantages of this for aerospace, submarine, mining, medical, military, and emergency sectors, as well as a number of others, are clear. I don't think I need to really explain that more. It eases our demand on the natural carbon-based fuel supplies that we have, coal, gas, oil, to name a few, while helping us meet current energy requirements and providing a smooth transition for the industry. So this is obviously because of the reduction in fuel consumption. It also allows us to utilize existing oil, gas, coal, and mining infrastructure for many years to come. So, of course, not only the coal power plants, but also larger scale mining equipment. It now makes us green, you could say. It reduces or eliminates the need to service engines and prolongs the life of the engine. So this is, of course, because it can clean out the carbon residue from the engine. Although this can be disruptive, at the same time, it also brings a lot of advantages. And the whole industry of retrofitting Thunderstorm generators is certainly going to give mechanics a lot of work here, so I am not too concerned. And the OEMs. It reduces or eliminates the reliance on rare minerals for energy production and storage, or reducing carbon emissions. So this includes catalytic converters, which of course aren't so good for the environment, and also we should probably be analyzing the other gases that are coming out of them aside from carbon. It eliminates the heat signature caused by carbon exhaust emissions, and this probably also has some obvious uses for people in certain industries. It can be configured to produce rare or useful elements through a process of stepwise atomic reconstruction, transmutation. At the moment, obviously this is more of a scientific endeavor. This is not the intended use of the primary unit, but it's certainly one of the most interesting things that it does, and this is subject to much further research at this point. It can be used to remediate toxic materials and render them safe and inert. For example, liquids and gases. So an example of this is tip leachate, which has been trialed in the bubbler in various experiments, and you can find more about this in Malcolm Bendall's notes. I won't talk about it more here, but there are certain ways to use the Thunderstorm generator to remediate toxic materials, not only the gases through it. How does the Thunderstorm generator work? The Thunderstorm generator system consists of 3 primary units, which are retrofit to the exhaust and air intake of, in this example that we're going to show, an internal combustion engine. The Thunderstorm generator processes are kickstarted by the existing waste heat, shockwave, and carbon provided by the engine, as well as, and I don't mention it here, but the vacuum and compression pulse of the engine's pistons itself. So we've got the air intake, Unit 1, ionizer air intake. This is the first unit. This flows through into the bubbler or the plasmoid generator, Unit 2. And we're going to go through these units individually, so I won't go into them too much here. And this flows through into the inner nested spheres of the Vajra, through the system, into the air intake or carburetor of the engine. And then on the other side, you've got the exhaust coming out, flowing through, and exiting the Vajra on the other side, the third unit of the system. So let's see how each of these units work one by one. Unit 1, ionizer or air intake. First unit is the air intake, which contains a UV bulb of a specific frequency. This first step preconditions the air coming into the second unit, the bubbler or the plasmoid generator, to help kickstart the next phase of the process. So first we see in this diagram the UV light, which is contained within the chamber, and this is no longer a bulb like this. This is updated in newer iterations of the technology, but it shows the basic principle that this is essentially a chamber with a UV light inside of it, and then this goes through into the second unit of the system, and here you can see it retrofit to an actual unit. Unit 2, the plasmoid generator or bubbler. Utilizing the measured vacuum and compression cycles of the engine, air flows through the system, agitating the water in the bubbler and reducing the surface tension between the water and the air, and causing a spectrum of different sized bubbles to form. Larger bubbles rise to the surface and explode, and the small bubbles get smaller and smaller until they cavitate. The water coherence domains naturally present in the volume of water are fused via this process to give birth to MSART plasmoids, or waterborne, self-sustaining structured plasma fields. This is obviously a mouthful, but essentially we are generating small bubbles. You can see this milky kind of foam in the top of the bubbler, and this indicates that the system is ideally working optimally, and this little photo of an imploding bubble here. So this is what we're looking for. We're creating little plasma entities when we get a spark, when we implode bubbles, small bubbles. So this is all the bubbler is doing, using the existing action of the engine's pistons to pulse the bubbler and create these micro bubbles, collapse them in the top of the bubbler chamber. And then the third unit of the system, and don't worry, we are going to explore some of these parts in more depth. I'm not going to leave you just with that. Unit 3, the Thunderstorm Generator, or the Vajra. The majority of the fusion process occurring in the Thunderstorm Generator occurs in the third unit of the system, the Vajra, which consists of two nested sets of stainless steel spheres connected by nested tubes. And the Vajra is the part that is retrofit directly to the engine's air intake and the exhaust. So we could see it here. This is the line coming in from the bubbler, and this goes into the center nested cavity here between the 3 and 2 inch spheres. And then the exhaust is retrofit here at the top. This is it here. And the exhaust stream is going into the outer nested cavity. And this is the 4:3:2 ratio, which I talk about in a lot of my other videos. But this is very important to the construction of the device and why we get the particular phenomena that does occur, which is shown here, these impact marks, essentially. And this is the action of the plasmoids. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And we'll talk about this analysis too, which is by the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. So you can see in this diagram, once again here, this is just one I was talking about. The air intake is coming into the center nested cavity, and the exhaust is coming into the outer. And these are two opposing vortexes, clockwise and counterclockwise, which don't actually touch each other. As we can see, the chambers or the cavities are separated, but we are sending two vortexes past each other for a reason, again, which we will explore a little further later. Now we get to the test results. This is the official verification, I guess you could say, by Element Materials Technology Environmental UK. So they are verified by the UK government and globally, essentially, aside from certain particular countries, to do emissions testing. And their results are certified and can't be taken lightly. They really do verify that this is what is coming out of the unit that they tested. So this is the particular unit that they tested, which is hosted at Logical in the UK. And these are the results that they got. And these are presented a little more complexly than most of the ones that we just get with a gas analyzer or simpler equipment. So I'm going to go through them in some other tests in a little bit. But essentially you can see that the carbon exhaust fumes are reduced very, very significantly. The water vapor is reduced, interestingly enough, because obviously we do have more moisture going to the system, which some people make some claims about, so this is very interesting to note. And the oxygen is, of course, increased dramatically. So let's take a look at that again in another diagram here, which was created by Steve Earle in conjunction with Malcolm. So yeah, we can see significantly reduces CO2, CO, etc. from the exhaust emissions while increasing oxygen content nearly 7,000%. And so just to show how dramatic this decrease or increase, depending on what we're talking about, is in the system, you can see this represented here. On the left, the standard engine, and then what we're getting in the Thunderstorm Generator retrofit. And this is obviously, scaled to the ratios that were found in the element test results. So the oxygen, water vapor, total VOCs as the carbon here, sulfur dioxide, ammonia. You can pause and look at this slide, but this is what the certified results are showing. Next, we've got public demonstrations of the technology, and these have all been done on various different units. We had a public demo at an energy conference in Switzerland in 2023. This was with Malcolm, and Bob Greeny was there, as well as others. Many scientists came and saw the engine demoed and Malcolm speak, and Bob as well. We had a public demo in New South Wales earlier this year, and there's actually been a number of public demos in Australia, too many to list on this slide, but in all of them, we've been able to show that the technology works, except for one. But we don't need to mention that. That was just an unfortunate vacuum problem with the engine. Next, we have Cosmic Summit, which, once again, this is actually when the bubbler and the ionizer were not working. So this was only the Vajra attached. And this is something, again, that we'll talk about, but you can actually pre-charge the Vajra by using the bubbler and the ionizer attached, and then you can remove the bubbler and the ionizer. And for a period, the Vajra will actually remain charged with plasmoids and will still deliver a result. And this actually works with the engine itself as well. So after a while, you can charge up the system and the plasmoids will become infused within the metal, within the combustion chamber. And then you can actually remove the entire Thunderstorm Generator system and the emissions results will be, I'm not sure if permanently, but at least temporarily altered while the plasmoids remain in the system. and do their work. Next up, we can see another test here, Clearwater, Florida-based test, and this includes a fuel consumption test here, which wasn't that great. It was a 20% increase in fuel consumption, but we have seen tests that show a much greater increase in fuel consumption. But still, this is just on one particular retrofit that was done in the States, a particular iteration of the technology, and it confirms other results that the fuel consumption is indeed decreased. The India Smart Tech Conference also, Malcolm presented here along with Bob Greenyer once again, which is, I believe, where Bob Greenyer announced his hypothesis that the Thunderstorm Generator Vajra was producing ball lightning or plasmoids, or that may have actually been at Switzerland. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, we're going to talk about that very shortly as well. It was very important analysis done on the Thunderstorm Generator spheres. The public demo at Tesla Tech in USA in 2023 was where Malcolm first publicly announced the technology himself. Of course, Randall Carlson had famously announced it already on the Joe Rogan show, but we do have the footage of that. You can go on the How To website, which I'll link to below, and you can see that original demonstration and comments from the scientists who were there, who saw the Thunderstorm Generator working. There was a mass spectrometer brought along to that event by I believe, a doctorate in chemical engineering, Nikita Vovk, and they did some testing on it there. So I'm just kind of going on the periphery here. There's a lot deeper story to all of this, and often a lot more testing. Carrying on with the test results, though, here we can see various vehicle applications, including a turbine or auxiliary power unit for a jet. This was retrofit, back in 2019 in Australia, and I know the guys that helped Malcolm do this retrofit, and they provided me with the footage of the testing, which you can view on my channel, Alchemical Science. But we are currently retrofitting this again, I believe, to the same turbine or a very, very similar one with the new iteration of the technology. There was the Chevrolet 3100, the 1995 Chevy that Sam and Eli in the United States, they're Australians, they retrofit and they brought along to Cosmic Summit. You can see the reduction in CO2, CO, the increase in O2, oxygen, the decrease in HC, and the elimination of NOx here. There is a Plasmoid bike retrofit that was done by Ed Grimm in the United States, along with Malcolm. There was this Ford Futura that was retrofit in Australia, again by the same guys who helped with the turbine, Steve Monkhurst and his crew down in Melbourne. Shout out to them. And here's Roland Perry interviewing them, and I believe he went for a drive in the car. And this is just another shot of the Plasmoid Chevy retrofit here. There are some larger scale applications that have been done. Here are a couple of them. There is this Perkins main gas generator that was installed and tested in the UK. So this was like a large electrical substation that provides auxiliary power to the grid. And the emissions results were pretty good here. They aren't quite as good. There's still a very large drop you can see here between where the technology is running and when it is not, and also an increase in oxygen once again. However, as far as I'm aware, this one was not built with stainless steel, not with 304 stainless steel, so it's not quite as good as some of the other test results, and it's for that reason. And then we've also got the CAT generator as well, the large Caterpillar, which was tested in Melbourne in Australia, and you can see the results once again there. Then there was this coal furnace retrofit, a small prototype that was made up, just a little coal-burning furnace, and we can see once again this is with the technology off here, and then the transition of the technology on, and then with the technology fully on here, and there is once again pretty much a complete elimination of the carbon and a massive increase in oxygen, just like we see on the standard small petrol and diesel generator tests. Then there are the independent replications, and once again, this is just a couple of them, a lot of them Australians or guys I know, but there are others out there as well, and some larger retrofits as well that people are working on. Here is Saxon and Gary from New South Wales in Australia, and we can see their retrofit produces pretty much optimal results. And the usual, there was an independent replication in Germany early on, and they did this very early on with an older version of the technology, but they still got a very big reduction and increase in, reduction in CO2, increase in O2. Then there is Ben from South Australia, and he has done a retrofit himself as well. Gary actually, from over here, welded up his spheres, and we can see that he also is producing decent results. Sam's bike retrofit, he's the same guy who did the Plasmoid Chevy in the States. You can actually see it in the background there. And it's also producing good results, and I have test results from him that I will add into a future presentation. We had Dave's retrofit, who I've featured on the channel, and he's from Victoria in Australia, and his was producing great results as well with the Plasmoid Power Vajra. And Phil from the US, who I met at Cosmic Summit one year, he bought his own independent retrofit along as well, and is reporting that it smells like oxygen. So there's a lot of independent retrofits out there. Next, we get to an interesting part. This is the thermal phenomena. There is a few different things going on here. So this is Thunderstorm Generator temperature survey, and first the thermocouple readings. So temperature surveys using high-end certified thermocouple devices are being performed on the spheres of the Thunderstorm Generator Vajra by Lush Heat Treatment in the UK. The results show a dramatic differential between the temperature readings from different places analyzed on the spheres, which defy the conventional understanding of the laws of thermodynamics. The northern sphere is measured to be hundreds of degrees hotter than the southern sphere, and the exhaust manifold reaches far higher than normal temperatures. And so you can see he's hooked up thermocouples not just to the Vajra, but to actually all parts of the system here. And we'll see that in the next diagram. But just quickly, you can see in this image here, what we're talking about is that when the system is under fairly normal operation, you're just overcharging it a bit, you will see the glow in the top sphere and not in the bottom sphere. And even when we do any kind of readings after that point, there is a massive differential in temperature between these two parts of the system, which defies the normal laws of thermodynamics as far as people usually understand them. So here is the thermocouple readings as recorded by George Lush. I'm sorry that this is a fairly poor quality image, but it is what I have. So we can see a few different parts here, but if we look, this is the engine exhaust manifold. This is going up to about over 800 degrees here. This is the top part of the Vajra, just coming out of the exhaust. And then if we look for bottom sphere, that would appear to be this brown line here. So we see that that's not really peaking 200 degrees or yeah, it is just a little bit, but for the most part, it's down low, not really going much over 200 degrees. We can also see all of the other parts of the system recorded here, so you can look at that in more detail if you wish. We can see that backed up in the independent thermal imaging that's been done. Both this fellow here, Bradford Butler, who did this one at a conference, and there's a full video of that on the channel, but it was showing a massive differential of about 200 degrees in the best parts of his records. We've also done this ourselves, and several other independent replicators were there and have done this on their own systems, and yeah, we can see that there is a very, very big differential between different places on the Thunderstorm Generator. There are particular heat spots, and it can get even hotter than this. The highest recordings that I've heard of are about 700 degrees max, even on the top sphere, not just the exhaust manifold. But showing here, we've got 414 up the top here, and then we've got the center 191, and that's a fairly common differential that we can see, a few hundred degrees between pretty much any system. And so this is highly unusual. All right, next up, this is more unusual, the resonance and imploding heat, because although this is hot, it's not that hot, not for something that's glowing like this. So when the system has been overcharged to bring the Vajra to resonance during independent experiments, the Thunderstorm Generator Vajra has been shown to begin to glow first a dark red and then turning quickly to a pinkish purplish ultraviolet hue. The reactions occurring within the Vajra to cause the glowing of the stainless steel at relatively low temperatures are thought to look much like plasma arcing inside a Tesla globe, and there is evidence from further observations to support this. So this is obviously the Tesla globe here, and this is what we think is going on inside the spheres of the Thunderstorm Generator to cause this unusual hue here. And what is very unusual about this is you can put your hand right up very, very close to the system, and it feels like there's practically no heat. Several people have actually tapped the Thunderstorm Generator spheres with their finger and found that it's not that hot, even when it's glowing like this. So this is very interesting. Not only that, but in the next slide you shall see that we can actually see down in the corner here lightning coming out of the exhaust. And obviously this is very hard to capture, but I've seen this live with my own eyes, with others. And it looks like lightning arcing out of the exhaust. And we also see the plasmoids themselves arcing out of the spheres. So these are captures from David Evans' independent retrofit and the Plasmoid Power Vajra kit set. And Jack Bauer got these photos of the plasmoids arcing out. You just see them as little flashes. And in this one, he managed to capture one kind of flying a little further out of the system. So these conditions that we're running the system, these are overcharge conditions. We're running the system too hard, and so the plasmoids are arcing out. This is not how it's supposed to operate, but it certainly gives us evidence that there are indeed plasmoids in the system. An exhaust pipe doesn't do this. So this is photos from Paul Holland and his independent retrofit. You can see it arcing out here and arcing all over the device here. They're rather hard to see. We're going to try and get better footage of this and run the experiment again. These ones are from Strike Foundation, but same thing. We just see arcing and flashing, and the lightning in the exhaust that I've already mentioned. Next up, we've got the independent analysis of the samples taken from the 24 and 18-inch Thunderstorm Generator Vajra, the nested spheres, by the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. That's who performed the analysis. So this is the large caterpillar generator that we saw test results for before. This sphere, after running for around about 500 hours, this was cut open and samples were taken. And then SEM EDX analysis of these samples was done by Bob Grenier of the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, SEM scanning electron microscope. And this showed conclusively that ball lightning or plasmoid reactions were occurring in the device. The Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project analysis of these samples has been peer-reviewed by Dr. Robert Harlick, and these results are the subject of a major pending scientific paper. So this is ongoing, but Bob did a lot of initial research on these samples and did the original SEM work, which we're going to talk a little bit about. You can see the samples being cut here. All right, so first up, this is the artifacts that plasmoids leave behind on the inside between the 4-inch and 3-inch, or the 24-inch and 18-inch spheres in this case. So this is the outside of the inside sphere, so the middle sphere of the system, and then this is the inside of the outside sphere, the outer sphere of the system, the 24-inch. So we see all of these pock marks, essentially. And these polygonal pockmark structures, they show the telltale impact marks characteristic of plasmoid or ball lightning reactions. These are the Tesla globe effect that we were talking about, the plasmoids arcing from the inside to the outside spheres. And this is supported by the evidence that was provided by Dr. Takaaki Matsumoto in his book Steps to the Discovery of Electronuclear Collapse. And this is an improved version of one of the images in his original book, which is going to be re-released as a remastered work by the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project soon, and I had some hand in supporting that work, as well did Emma and Malcolm himself. So we're excited to see that coming out, but it does support and show that these ball lightning reactions leave these marks, and Bob Grenier has other experiments which also show this. I believe in Hungarian's Vega reactor is one of them, if I've got that correct. So next up, we can see some of the artifacts that Bob found that supported his hypothesis that plasmoids are in the system originally. So these are more of the artifacts. This is a crenellated iron and oxygen microsphere, which was found on the inside, I believe the inside of the outside sphere. It's a telltale artifact left behind by plasmoids found on the, there we go, yep, the inside of the outside sphere of the Thunderstorm Generator, Vajra. These microspheres have been identified in other peer-reviewed fusion systems, so including, I believe, Dr. Binjwain Huang's reactors, which were the subject of a recent important paper last year on plasmoids or ball lightning. So we can see this sphere here. What's very interesting about these is that they are hollow. They are iron and oxygen primarily on the outside, but they contain a spread of inorganic and organic elements, including carbon, typical of the atomic fusion process on the inside. And you can watch more on the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project channel about this and about the analysis of the Thunderstorm Generator. There are many videos, about 80. So here, assuming a regular array of medium-sized fractal toroidal magnetic cores, 30 micron apart, there would be over 1.1 billion structures per square meter, assuming complete coverage of the inside of the 24-inch outer sphere. There would be more than 129 million medium-sized interaction sites, and there are smaller and larger ones too. So this is essentially saying the whole inside of the outside sphere is just absolutely riddled with these things, which is showing that there is a lot of ball lightning or plasmoid reactions going on. And this is, I believe, paraphrasing Bob at least, more than he's found in any other system. Okay, so next up, this just shows a few more of the artifacts that are typical of ball lightning plasmoid synthesis fusion reactions, which were found in the Thunderstorm Generator analysis by MFMP. So we see this sulfur and calcium crystal bloom and the atomic concentration here, the fusion of titanium, and this is a yin-yang sign, which is also kind of typical of fusion reactions. It's where one part is being stripped up by a plasmoid arcing over to the other side. We also find this sulfur or calcium crystals in the background of this one. This is the iron crenellated sphere with nickel below that. This is it here. And then we're analyzing the crystals in the background there. And essentially, when this analysis is done, every single element, nearly up to iron, except for obviously the gases, which weren't checked for, was found present in the system, and a few beyond that as well. Malcolm likes to say the first 32 elements, and he's not entirely wrong. It essentially is nearly all of the first 32 elements of the periodic table are found on the inside of the reactor, and we'll talk about that again in a moment. First up, though, independent radiocarbon dating of the Thunderstorm Generator sphere sample. So this was done by Vilnius Radiocarbon, which are an accelerator mass spectrometry lab in Lithuania who specialize with this type of thing. This was submitted by the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project with support from Strike Foundation. And so what this is essentially saying here is that the carbon found inside the Thunderstorm Generator is very, very old. Weirdly old, like tens of thousands of years old. And so it can't really be, can it? Either this Vajra was found in a cave many, many years ago and we've just recovered it and stuck it on an engine, or carbon works in a little bit of a different way and we can speed up or slow down time within the Thunderstorm Generator, which is exactly what's being claimed ultimately. Next up, we go into the analysis performed by Dr. Robert Harlick. So one of the most interesting things that came from this, Dr. Robert Harlick has been very much involved in forming hypotheses on how the Thunderstorm Generator is ultimately working based on the observations and the data that we do have already, and he's continuing to do active experimentation himself and further analysis and writing several papers on the subject. But one of the things that Robert has identified in the MFMP analysis of the Thunderstorm Generator is black diamond. So diamond can only generally be synthesized from carbon under extreme temperatures and pressure. However, strings of amorphous carbon material identified during the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project analysis of the inside of the Thunderstorm Generator Vajra were found to be samples of synthetically formed black diamond. And this claim by Malcolm Bendall originally was confirmed and supported by Dr. Robert Harlick, who's spoken a little bit about it. And he is, of course, distinguished Professor Emeritus, and we've had him on the channel for an interview before. So the independent analysis of the samples taken from the Thunderstorm Generator also showed a spread of the majority of the first 32 elements of the periodic table, as we've spoken about. Although some of the elements identified could be found naturally in the inputs to the engine or the materials of the engine or the Thunderstorm Generator itself, many of these elements are not found in the system or its inputs. They are instead synthesized via a stepwise process of atomic reconstruction or transmutation, the alpha and omega ladder process. And this fact was confirmed again by subsequent analysis performed by the MFMP on a control sample, which was taken from a used engine exhaust, and they only found elements that are typical to the engine and its fuel source, rather than the spread of the first 32 elements of the periodic table that we find on the inside of the Thunderstorm Generator, just for reference. Next up, the birth of the MSAR plasmoid. The fusion of water coherence domains. So how is the plasmoid formed in the bubbler? This is what we're talking about here. And the source material comes from Dr. Robert Haralick, who has formed this hypothesis based on the original alpha ladder process. And he's worked on this with Malcolm Bendall, but this is what Robert himself has presented. So first up, a coherence domain in water is a collection of around 5 million or more water molecules in a compact volume that are all oscillating in phase within a self-entrapped magnetic field. This coherence domain is hypothesized to be toroidal. So this is just a very abstract 2D image that Robert's prepared of the coherence domains and all of the random events going on around them. So when multiple of these toroidal coherence domains come together so that we have two or more stacked tori with their 0 points or their vector magnetic potential fields in line, one of several possible configurations will occur. If a counterclockwise and clockwise tori stack together with their 0 points in line, they will act to cancel each other out to some extent. So two opposing forces or a standing wave. However, if two tori pointing in the same direction, so either clockwise or counterclockwise, but they've both got to be the same, so two clockwise or two counterclockwise. If they come together, then they will reinforce each other and they'll become more stable. So if all of the tori in this stack are all spinning in the same direction, they can become one single, more powerful tori or vortex. But the most stable configuration, in the third point here, when one stack of tori is going counterclockwise and one is going clockwise and the stacks are neighboring each other, so side by side rather than stacking on top, then the most stable geometry for the coherence domain is propagated. This stable geometry creates the womb to give birth to a greater torus. So you can imagine a greater torus forming from these two clockwise and anti-clockwise geometries supporting one another. When we agitate the water, the interface between the liquid and the air forms bubbles in the liquid. Larger bubbles simply rise to the surface and explode. But as we discussed, tiny bubbles, however, in the order of micron scale, instead of expanding and rising to the surface, they'll remain small and they'll get smaller and smaller. The pressure of air increases inside the bubble as its cavity grows ever smaller, and eventually when this tiny bubble does pop, then the negative and positive charges meet. And typically this will cause a spark, and a longitudinal wave forms between the two tori, fusing them together into the plasmoid. So this spark, this is sonoluminescence, or the star in the jar experiment, which you may have all heard of. This is an old one, but you can cause a spark by a tiny imploding bubble. But when we've got coherent water, agitated water involved, and we're creating the right size spectrum of bubbles, then we can use this to fuse water coherence domains and create coherence in the system and create these little toroidal fellows here, the plasmoid. So, the alpha and omega ladder process. Stepwise atomic reconstruction, transmutation, or vortex fusion. So many different names for it. Of course, people used to call it cold fusion or low-energy nuclear reactions. I don't really like these terms. They're out of date and they don't really apply. This is not a nuclear process in a true sense, as we'll discuss shortly. And also, the fusion event is not cold. It is actually very, very hot. But of course, it occurs at room temperature in the system and there is no large heat emissions or large heat inputs, so I understand why it can be called cold fusion in that sense. It's not entirely wrong there. So down here we can see our plasmoid, who is the key to all of this, and I have an entire video breaking down this chart and explaining it in the context of Dr. Robert Haralick's hypothesis. But just for now, this chart by Malcolm Roy Bendall in 2025, the alpha and omega ladder shows how through the successive fusion of 4 hydrogens to helium, this is here, and then helium, adding helium again to the element at each subsequent step, degree by degree, the first 32 elements can be formed from a simple input like water, which consists of hydrogen and oxygen, of course. So here's the steps here. We can see adding a helium each time. Each step on the diagram is labeled with the extra energy in mega electron volts that's either released or required at each step in the fusion process. Fusion can only occur step by step. Each step is like a ratchet, and we cannot take one dramatic jump, even if all the energy is available at once, which is why we call it the stepwise fusion process. Although, of course, this can all happen in an instant. So although it's step by step, it could be very quick steps from our time scale. Water coherence domains are fused by the spark generated through water bubble cavitation, the formation of the plasmoid, which we've already discussed, and energy is released during this fusion reaction, but this energy becomes part of the self-entrapped field of the MSAT, or waterborne plasmoid. The plasmoid then provides the energy necessary for subsequent fusion events within itself. So unlike airborne plasmoids, which are employed in most room temperature fusion reactors that are discussed anywhere really, I don't really know of another reactor like this, the waterborne plasmoids generated in the Thunderstorm Generator, they have a non-radiating boundary, and therefore these reactions do not emit gamma radiation, and this has been tested. The alpha ladder process itself is not the invention of Malcolm Bendall or Robert Haralick. It's been known as the fusion process taking place in giant red stars since the 1950s, but Malcolm and Robert have recently significantly expanded upon this process, and they've applied it practically to model the atomic and subatomic reactions occurring in the Thunderstorm Generator based on the current observation and analysis, and supported by other work in this area. So here's just another small breakdown of the atomic fusion reactions occurring in the Thunderstorm Generator. The table shows us the alpha ladder process that fuses each of the successive elements from carbon to iron with helium, and elemental fusion produces high-energy particles, including gamma radiation, as we've already mentioned. However, in the case of the Thunderstorm Generator, the MSAT plasmoid is able to absorb this radiation into its black hole, or the 0 point. In addition, all energetic particles, including photons, gamma radiation, etc., produced cannot escape the electromagnetic containment field, so the black hole being the only exit, which is a closed door, a non-return valve. Alright, so now on to what is happening in the larger world. This is about the commercial production and the strategic partnerships going on. So a few of the primary ones here are, of course, Strike Foundation, which is both the holder of Malcolm Bendall's IP, and it has some commercial arm, but also a non-profit and educational branch, which I am, I guess, allied with, and a lot of the things I put on my channel are certainly supported by Malcolm. He provides a lot of information and data like he has for this presentation, which is why I credit him for it. Then there is Rockpecker. They're a large Indian manufacturer and engineering in the mining industry, and you can see them here, Kartik with Malcolm, and these are the prototyping going on in the Rockpecker factory here. They're allied with Acris Industries in Australia, who's working on a lot of the design and also manufacturing of the Thunderstorm Generator. We talk about all of this in my mass manufacturing announcement video when I went and interviewed some of these guys, and I've also visited both of these facilities myself and seen them. And also Landlogical, who I mentioned here, they're in the UK. They're the ones who did the unit which was tested, and then we got Landlogical in the UK here. I've also visited their facilities and done the closed room test of the Thunderstorm Generator, where we closed up the doors and ran the generator for a period, which I've done several times now with those guys. And they've also been involved in the commercialization of the Thunderstorm Generator for quite a while and have done significant R&D and research. They also were the ones behind the element testing, the independent UK testing, which was done. And then there is Alpha Prospects, and they are one of the larger license holders in multiple countries, and where smaller investors usually go to invest in the technology. And they're also producing their own units as well in Thailand. So Strike Foundation, owner of Malcolm's IP, and they're engaged in ongoing conversations at government, corporate, and industrial level globally, and strategic partners in the UK, US, Thailand, India, Australia, and quite a number of other nations now are currently involved in the process of pre-production prototyping of the Thunderstorm Generator, and they're preparing for mass production and worldwide distribution and application of the retrofit. This is something that we're going to be providing regular updates from now on, as I'm in touch with these guys, and they are more than willing to share the updates going on. Next up, media coverage. Of course, you've got me, 100 videos here, including this one. Over 1.4 million people have viewed our coverage of the Thunderstorm Generator, Malcolm Bendall, Basic Mathematics, and the science of plasmoids and transmutation so far, and that's growing every day, so thank you guys for all of the support. But although you are not seeing this in your local newspaper yet, a number of large online media organizations have covered the technology, including the Joe Rogan show, where Randall Carlson first famously announced it on the episode with Graham Hancock, the Sean Ryan show, the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, who had mentioned they have over 80 videos documenting Bob Greeny's analysis of the Thunderstorm Generator and some of the things we've talked about in this presentation. Funny Old World with Johanna James. She visited the technology and did some testing when Bob Greeny was around there. Randall Carlson, his own podcast with Bradley Young, Cosmographia. They have talked about this, and they've interviewed myself and Johanna on our experiences there. Sheila Rahman, who explores the science of harmonics and the plasmoid unification model and other topics of the science on her YouTube channel. And there are plenty of others, including the Danny Jones podcast. And if you just search for it, then there is a lot of coverage of this. Now, we're only going to very briefly touch on this, but the future of the science, frequency and geometry, and this is what this is all about. So Sheila Rahman, who we mentioned before, she talks about coherent versus incoherent systems. Energy is generally leaked and wasted, and she used these two different images from her 3D virtual oscilloscope to show the difference between different sets of frequencies or harmonics put together, and how they can either make a system more efficient or they can make it less efficient. And this is what we're doing with the Thunderstorm Generator and what is behind Malcolm's plasmoid unification model ultimately. So systems operating on principles of harmonic resonance are more efficient and generate less waste. Waste products become recycled as usable energy. The Thunderstorm Generator is just one application of this fundamental principle. So this is her verification of the plasmoid unification model through modeling on her 3D oscilloscope. In 2024, she modeled this entire plasmoid unification model here and just found a stunning level of coherence. These are waveforms, but in 3D, and this is quite spectacular. This is a little bit like cymatics, just a little more complex and done electronically, but it shows a similar type of phenomenon. And of course, this is Malcolm Bendall's plasmoid unification model. If you don't know about it, I do have some videos about this on the channel. It's quite a complex thing to understand, but it explains a lot of the underlying mathematics, but also unification between geometry, light, sound, time, matter, and he's not really kidding. There is a lot packed in here, and this is, I guess, built on Walter Russell's work, which is already a pretty incredible unification model. So I think anyone who's a fan of Walter Russell will basically understand the chart here and be able to see that Malcolm is really onto something. Just carrying on with that, a lot of these numbers can be explored by what here is often called the table of most harmonic numbers, or the lambda grid, or the template. It's simply doubling and tripling, and we find a lot of the most important numbers and a natural system of highly consonant harmonics. This is very similar to Pythagorean tuning, but just slightly different, and it can really help people understand the plasmoid unification model and the related technologies. You'll see the 432 of the Thunderstorm Generator spheres here, and the 5184 of the 51.84 degree angle, and there's a lot more to it as well. Here we see another of the future things being worked on in terms of the science. So this is calculating the frequencies of the elements, and this was inspired again by Sheila Rahman's work, but this was done by Dr. Robert Haralick. So he has calculated the frequency of every element using their atomic number. using their atomic mass, which he calculates from the atomic weight. And then we get a frequency in hertz at the end here, and then he's dropped that 73 octaves so that we can better explore the harmonics or how these frequencies relate. And you'll certainly see some similarities to this grid with a compounding error or to Pythagorean tuning in that, which is very interesting. And myself and Robert and Sheila and Malcolm and everybody is looking into this. We're all very interested. There's some clear patterns going on. Then the technology side, the Thunderstorm Generator is a little bit of a Trojan horse, I guess. The principles behind it can be used for far more interesting technologies, which are forward-thinking and not solving a problem that already exists, like the combustion engine or the coal power plant. We use the energy more directly. So Malcolm has plans for and is already in initial discussions on a governmental level about building his planetary power plant, which was initially built by Nikola Tesla. Malcolm's new design is very much inspired by Tesla's design, but does have some different elements, including a large column filled with argon, which he wants to put in the Himalayas. Essentially, this will be the power plant that can provide wireless electricity. We can use antennas to harness it, just like Tesla did with his car and with his Wardenclyffe Tower experiments, and this can provide free energy for the world. It's going to take some time, which is why we need transition technologies like the Thunderstorm Generator, but this is what we're all aiming for. And if you understand the basic principles of what Nikola Tesla was talking about, then you will see, even from these very basic plans, and you can find more information about this in Malcolm's lectures and his notes, that this concept actually works. This is how it works. We can produce a link between the Earth and the ionosphere through the Schumann cavity, and we can produce unlimited energy for the world, which can be harnessed very easily by a mobile phone or an antenna or whatever you want. And the other technology that I wanted to mention is the Vajra implosive turbine, which you can find an entire video on the channel with this thumbnail that you see here, and that provides a full breakdown of the schematic and actually reads through the draft patent application that was submitted for this. And you can see one of the photos of the prototype here, but you can find more of that in Malcolm Bendall's full presentation over on HowTube. And this is a conceptual design here for a craft that would utilize this turbine, but of course it can also be used for planes, boats, landcraft, whatever. It's obviously space, though, is one of the interesting applications. Based on the work of Ken Shoulders and the thrust that this could produce, it could get you to Mars in about 2 weeks, although Malcolm notes that speeding up and slowing down may actually take a lot longer. And that is all for this time, folks. I hope that this presentation has given you a more up-to-date overview of the Thunderstorm Generator and the developments of the associated science of waterborne plasmoids and the stepwise transmutation process going on behind it. Remember that I have published over 100 other videos on these topics on alchemical science, as I mentioned. You can also find Malcolm Bendall's full original lecture series from a couple years ago now over on HowTube, and I'll also likely republish this over on the channel here soon in the future, so keep an eye out. If you are running a conference or your own podcast and you're interested in me giving a similar presentation on your platform, then please reach out to me at alchemicalscientist@gmail.com. That's alchemicalscientist@gmail.com. I am unable to respond to individual questions or social emails simply due to time and volume constraints, but I do wish to make myself available to public audiences to help foster greater reach and education about plasmoid fusion and the Thunderstorm Generator. I'll also be making myself available to speak on Vedic or vortex-based maths in the future, but I'm still finalizing the slide deck for that presentation for now. Thank you for watching. I am Jordan Collin, a student of Malcolm Bendall, and this is Alchemical Science. I'll see you next time.